So I'll kick off, and this is a talk just to make sure everyone's in the right place. 5 steps to a world-class supply chain. So I'm going to be presenting with my colleague Louise. We come from a company called CACI. I'm on the logistics and supply chain side of CACI, and I'll be presenting those bits in our presentation. CACI does a diverse range of, provides a diverse range of expertise and services. Louise is much more an expert in understanding customers and location. We think that to design a world-class supply chain, you need both. And without both of those things, you're not going to achieve it. Okay? So, a little bit about CACI, what we do. What we really do is we do incredible, amazing things with data. And data-driven solutions combined with expertise, combined with technology, combined with a lot of different elements to a whole supply chain solution. And with all of those bits of expertise and the toolkit that we have available to us, we go through the whole customer journey from understanding a customer and really getting to the nub of what motivates a customer, what then they're demanding. So if you've got a supply chain and you need to get products to them, where are they going to be buying those products? How much are they going to be buying of those products? You need to have answers to these things if you're going to do it properly. Please take a seat. And so we go all the way through from understanding the customer through your location strategy, things like where you locate your retail outlets, how you market to your customers, but then coming through to what's really relevant for the people in the room here, which is the logistics and getting the products to your customers in the most effective way, okay? And you can see some of the brands that we work with. We work with these companies every day and a whole load more. So we've been doing this stuff for a long time and we know what we're talking about. Hopefully that's done my credibility slide. So let's move on. I pilfered the title from this, from an exhibition, a webinar I was on a couple of weeks ago. But one of the things that all of our clients have been saying to us for years and years is, we need efficiency. We're a logistics operation, we're a supply chain operation. Without efficiency, we're not going to make a profit. That hasn't changed. However, what has changed is the world. And there's been a lot of big events going on in the world. And this is the title I've stolen, the disruption decade. COVID's happened, Brexit's happened, Ukraine's happened. Supply chain shortages in China have happened. There's been so much going on in the world recently that have caused big issues for companies with a logistics operation and a supply chain. All the way from supply and all the problems there, through distribution and the driver shortages, through consumers being that much more in demand. I blame Amazon for that generally, they're over there. But anyway, what consumers are demanding in by way of logistics at the moment is causing big problems for companies that need to fulfill what they want. All the way through to, well, we're a business and we need to turn a profit, but we need to make sure we're not emitting too much carbon. And really, to create an optimal distribution network is a big, big headache. And frankly, I'm not quite sure how companies can do it without the kind of technology and the expertise that we're talking about here. So, to the nub of it, we have a 5-step methodology for creating a world-class distribution network. And this is what it is. First of all, as I've said, you've got to understand your customer. You've got to understand what motivates them. What are they buying now? What might they be buying in 3 years' time or 5 years' time? Where might they be buying it? And how much are they going to be buying? And that brings on to being able to quantify and locate the demand that they're going to be asking for. And also for your different propositions. Are they going to be buying using click and collect, or are they going to be using pick-up drop-off points at petrol stations? Are they going to continue to buy online, or are they going to go to stores? All of these things are critical. Once you've done that, and you've got the understanding of the demand, we go into actually building the model of that. And that's a lot of clever technology and clever methodology going into being able to create a model to simulate a supply chain. It's a bit like a digital twin, which is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. We're consciously not using that, but it's in that kind of area. simulate your supply chain. Once you've done that, and you've got that, you can see what's going on right now, but in a digital world rather than in the real world. And the beauty of that means that you can come on to step 4 and start playing with it. But play with it in the digital world, play with it with data before going on to, there are 2 seats here, 3 seats here if you want to come and sit down, you're more than welcome. Before going on to actually making those concrete decisions and investing in a new distribution center, in new vehicles, in extra marketing, in new ways to get your product to market. If you can simulate that all with your model and understand what that means in terms of cost, in terms of capacity, in terms of headache, in terms of inventory, then you're in a good place. And then the last step is just keeping it live, making sure that that model doesn't go out of date so you can keep making strategic changes eventually to evolve into a world-class supply chain. So having said that, I'll pass over to Louise, and she's going to talk to you with a lot more expertise than me all about customers.
Okay, great. Thank you, Paul. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, fab. So yeah, I'm going to talk through the first 2 steps, which are understanding the consumer and then how you go on to quantify the demand and what that means for where you need to be putting things. And the basic premise behind this is that different consumers present different problems, different challenges. So you need to be aware of those different consumers so that you can, those different requirements, so you can prioritize what you need to in the right places. So if you were to take an example of a young couple, they might be in their first flat together. This is a DIY focused example. For them, things like price and convenience are going to be really important. They're going to be a bit more difficult to deliver to. They're more likely to be in flats. They're going to be where there's limited parking. They're not home in the daytime. So they're going to like things like click and collect so they can pick up after work, as opposed to, say, a more older homeowner with larger gardens where the products they're going to want are different. They might be after more plants and gardening equipment, which is going to present different challenges. They like to shop in store, they like that in-store experience, but they do want to be delivered to, and they're further from your stores, they're further from your distribution centres. Things like sustainability really matter to them as well. And then at the other end, you've got someone who might be a bit more skilled, DIY trade. They want a very specific item, and they want it very quickly, and they want it now, and they want it to be easy. And they want good prices on that as well. So these different consumers, all relevant, but they're presenting different challenges in different places. So understanding what matters where means that you can get the right things right in the right places. So start by understanding your consumer so that you can work out what you need to really focus on getting right first. So you can start by just profiling your customers, looking at what channels they're using, what services they're using, are they buying into certain categories more than other categories? So you paint up a really good picture of how they're behaving now. Getting a bit of context on top of that helps as well. So if you can understand their lifestyle, the property types they live in, where they are they more likely to take own label versus premium products? And what's really driving them? So does sustainability matter to them more, or price? Or is it convenience? So just trying to understand what really matters to them most. And you can get more bespoke with that as well and start to get into primary research where you might start to drill into, okay, well, what happened if I changed my delivery price from this to this? What kind of impact might that have? So there's lots that you can do to understand what really matters to your consumer. Underneath what we do, we love all the information we've got about consumers, but we love maps as well. So all of our data, or a lot of our data, you can also help to understand those different consumer groups and where they're located. So this is an example from Cape Town, and you can see the red areas are where you've got more wealthy, larger households. The orange areas are where you've got that sort of more urban affluence. So again, they're going to be presenting different challenges. They're going to want different things. They're going to want things faster. And the sort of blue areas are sort of lower affluence. So again, things like price is going to be more important to those. So understanding the sort of shape of the local area and what you need to really focus on where will help you to shape your network. One of the other things we're using more and more as well is so consumer spend transaction data. So it's important to stress this is coming from sort of data it's not from customer data, it's from transaction data from sort of bank cards. Basically, you can see what people are spending. And you can start to understand how you are positioned relative to the market and where there's headroom and how your consumers compare to others. So in this instance, you can see Sainsbury's and Morrison's and see how their sales have changed. But you can also see on the right-hand side, it's maybe a little bit small, but you can see their customer profiles are very different. So when they think about online operations, they're going to need to think about quite different things. The next one's just comparing Ocado to Morrison's, which is quite interesting, where if you look on this side of the graph, the Ocado profile is much more affluent, much more urban than the Morrison's profile. So again, they're going to need to think about quite different things, and when they're being, all sort of operated through Ocado. But yeah, you can see again, this comes from the sort of transaction data that helps you banking data, so you can see what's being spent where. It's quite a powerful way to see where there might be room to grow. The next bit's about how to go on and quantify that demand and locate that demand. So first off, if you can understand where the demand is now, so where are your current customers is one thing, but where are there more people that look like your current customers that you might not be quite reaching yet, or your distribution services aren't quite getting there yet? Which product categories is there demand for now and where, which ranges and services? Online halo is something that a lot of retailers are thinking about as well, where you're trying to understand what is the benefit of having an online operation to store. So your store sales are often higher in areas where you've got online sales, I get the other way around. So your online sales are often higher in areas where you've got stores, and understanding how those channels interplay together is important, and understanding where you might have an opportunity to get more headroom, more share of that demand that's out there. But you also need to go forward. So what's the future demand? Where's their population growth? Where is their online growing? Where are the future, anything that you might be looking at, like things like rapid delivery solutions, where are they going to be most relevant? Where is their headroom, and where are there groups that you're maybe not getting now, but actually you've got a bit of a strategy to tap into certain demographics more than you have been so far? So understanding those people who you're after and where they are is really key, and how much money they might have to spend. And then what's the role of the different channels? So what's the role of online? How do you need to deliver the services to those customers where to make the most of it? The last one I was just going to show you, we work all across the world. In the UK, we're generally quite lucky that the geography, a lot of the data we've got to work with is quite granular. But when you're working in other parts of the world, it's not always the case. So this is an example in Egypt where if you look on the right-hand side, you can see the standard data that's available is quite sort of chunky and quite difficult to really use to plan a distribution strategy around. But we do a lot of work blending different data sets to take that down to a much more granular level. This is just looking at where the population is, which is a good place to start, but then we can go in more detail than that as well and look at different demographic groups and where the right people are that you really want to be focusing in on. Okay, I think that's it from me. I'll hand back over to Paul.
Thank you very much, Lou. So far, what have we got? We've got a really good understanding of the customer, and then that translates into a really good understanding of what kinds of products they're buying, where they're buying it, and how they want to take delivery of those products. Okay, so what comes next? Well, this is the fun bit, or in my view, this is the fun bit. So essentially, some of you may be familiar with this kind of model, but what we're really looking at here is a model of a supply chain to get a baseline of the as-is, or the current situation of what your distribution network looks like, all the way from, on this map, the blue points, where products hit your supply chain. So it might be a port or an airport, or it might be a manufacturing plant where products are actually created, but it's where they start to hit your supply chain. And then that goes through to your distribution network with the routes to get to your distribution points, so warehouses, cross-docks, central and regional distribution centres. So all of these things can be and should be modelled in order to really understand it. And then right at the end is the customer, where those products need to get to. It might be their homes, it might be stores, it might be businesses, depending on what the product is, depending on what the business model of your organisation is. And for each one of these things, we're really starting to develop a detailed idea of how much it costs to transport products and different types of products from one location to the next, how much it costs to store, what the capacity is in each of the locations to store the different types of products, and the capability if you need to store certain things that are very secure, or if it's food, whether they need to be frozen or chilled, or certain, we've got one of our clients is a sushi distributor, and they need to store a certain type of tuna at minus 28 degrees. So there are all these different things that need to be modeled. Once you've done that, then you can start to get a really good understanding of your model as it actually is now. So you can look at the maps because it's a lot easier to consume a visualization of things, but the maps aren't going to be that useful without a lot of data that goes behind the scenes as well. So you understand how much product is going through each distribution center, via which modes of transport, for primary, for secondary, for last mile. And it starts to sow the seeds of questions there, because you can get this really good model. It needs to be signed off by your organization to understand this is really what's going on. Once you can do that, you can start thinking, okay, what else can we do to play with this? Where should we focus? What are the problem areas? What could be improved? Where's the headroom for growth? All of these kind of questions start to come up once you get this detailed, visual and rich understanding of your supply chain. And if that bit was fun, this bit's even more fun. So you can start to get, and the key message here is, changing anything in your distribution network is an expensive operation where risks are taken. If you don't do it in a data-driven way, you're playing with fire, and you might be making some very expensive decisions that aren't quite right. So what we're saying is, these are the questions that you can answer. Applying this kind of methodology and using this data, using these tools, you can start to answer these questions. I'm not going to read all of these out, but it's how you get the maximum efficiency, how you can start to introduce new kind of products. What kind of fleet do you need? Where does everything need to be located? And key, is it robust enough to handle the next big world event that have been happening right now? Yeah? So here's the answer, or here's a way of trying to answer the question, and this is a classic logistics question. How many depots do you really need? Where should they be located? So we can see here, I've just put a simple graph up. The transportation cost. As you increase the number of depots, rather predictably, because you're closer to your customers, generally the transportation costs reduce. Great. But because you're building more depots or renting more depots, the cost of the distribution centers goes up. Right. So simply put, the intersection of the total of these and the lowest point on that graph tells you how many distribution centers you should really have. Okay? And again, using the right technology, they need to be located in the right place and be told the right capability. This is great because I can see lots of nodding going on in the audience. So thanks for the feedback. It tells me I'm talking to people who are appreciating it. And you can start testing a wide range of potential challenges at this stage. What happens when your customer demand does change for different product groups in different areas? What happens when you introduce new products? What happens when sales increase through marketing? What happens when your store network changes? And what happens, how does that need to be supported in the right way? What happens when you have to change your fleet? Everyone knows that the fleets need to change fairly soon because of electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles, probably first for vans and then for bigger. It's coming. Can't avoid the fact that at some point it's coming. Who's going to make these decisions and what decisions are you going to make? And without this kind of modeling, I wish you luck. So that's essentially the model, but there is a key part to it, which is that if you do this once, that's great. Today, you're in good shape. But over time, if you're really building a model with longevity, you need to keep your baseline up to date. And that's what the keeping it live part is. It's a bit of housekeeping. So you've got your baseline model. Well, guess what? Your customer demand changes. All the stuff that Louise talked you through changes too. And therefore, you need that to be refreshed, whether it's annually or biannually or every few years. I don't know. It's different depending on the different organization that you're talking about. But that needs to be refreshed. And also, when you actually do put together a solid business case, take it to your board, make a significant change in your organization, that needs to then be reflected back into your baseline. So that when you're making changes in your digital twin or in your simulation to see if it's a good idea, you need to have that baseline to compare it with to say, okay, is it better than what we're doing now? Is it more risk? Is it less risk? Is it more cost effective? Is it less cost effective? So you need to keep that baseline up to date. Otherwise, creating the business case to create change in your organization is going to be a really difficult thing to do. Yeah? And again, you can start playing with a lot of different scenarios. We've talked about a lot of them today already. So I'm coming to an end. So this is where I've got one more slide, but after that, you're going to get an opportunity to ask questions. So if you haven't got questions that you've primed and ready to ask, then now's the time to start thinking about it. But in summary, by leading with the consumer and getting this whole model going through your organization, you will be able to most effectively, A, reduce costs, but B, offer services that will deliver the sales and facilitate the growth that most organizations are after, whilst remaining robust, so that you can keep the flexibility and the robustness of your supply chain and your distribution network. So that's essentially our message, what we've got to talk to you about today. I was purposefully asked not to make this a sales pitch, but I am going to say, yes, we can offer these services. But with that, it's a thought leadership piece, really. So open to the floor. Any questions from anybody? No questions. I'm taking it to be everything's just really crystal clear. Yes. Sorry, could you say that louder? How frequently should you keep the data up to date? That might be a question you can answer, Lou.
Yeah, and it probably depends on which part of the data. I think there are some bits that you'd want to keep pretty live. Where your distribution centres are, the sort of very dynamic parts of your network. You'd want to keep them live. The base data you can probably update annually, quarterly, whatever. I suppose population doesn't move as fast, but yeah, different bits at different cadence depending on the data set.
Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. There's a question behind you. I heard there was a question about granularity of cost, but I didn't hear the rest of it, I'm afraid. Oh, for the actual modelling in the first place, as granular as you need it to be. So generally, for a typical project like this, we would break down our clients' work into the sensible product groupings. So Louise used an example for DIY. With DIY, you might have very different distribution network, for example, for garden furniture, as you would for power tools and paint. So we'd go down to that level of detail, but then how much we would go down to the level of, okay, well, what modes of transport do you use to transport it by for different legs of your distribution network, and therefore for different product groups, how much does it cost to transport that? And then when you're talking about the distribution points, what are your fixed costs? What are your variable costs at those distribution points? It can all be built into the model. Different companies that we work with have different levels of data that's available, but it can certainly be flexible to tailor it. But it's got to be, it's got to make it real. Without making it real, then if without making it real, then the value of the model is lost. Yeah. Sorry. Is it a SaaS model? Well, there are various bits of technology that are part of this whole model. Some of it is SaaS solutions, yeah. Some of it is data, and some of it is actually sitting down and talking to you and working with a consulting way as well. So it comes together with data, with technology, and with consulting. But the software parts are SaaS models, yeah. Great. Yeah, please.
The use cases for such a distribution network modeling, are they more of a strategic planning, changing the key components of it, or they could be used on a daily level, planning your operations almost at the, whatever.
Yeah, okay. Great question, thank you. So just in case everybody else didn't hear, the question was about, are these bigger strategic changes or are they more daily changes to your operation? Is that about right? Yeah, so for this model, it's actually designed for more of the strategic side. Could it be adapted for a daily model? It could. We've thought that through, but it's really designed for the strategic side, and it would need to be a bigger project to turn it into an operational tool. Yeah. Yeah, we need to introduce a few other different bits of technology in order to be able to do that, because that's a slightly different type of challenge, as I'm sure you appreciate. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay. So I'm taking that as everyone's got all the pieces of information they want. That's great. Thank you very much. We would love to talk to you if you would like to pick up anything with us. We're on a stand about 3 blocks in that direction, the other side of Pallet Line. Name of the company again is CACI. This is Louise, I'm Paul. And we'd love to follow up with anybody who's interested as well. So if you are, please make it known to our colleagues. We've got little scanners and you've got badges with barcodes on. So if you'd like a follow-up conversation, please make sure that you've been scanned as well. Great, thank you very much.